A2 highway, Madrid South exit. 2:30 p.m. on a scorching Tuesday in July. Officer Carmen Ruiz pulled over a black BMW clocked at 88 miles per hour in a 56 miles per hour zone. Routine. She'd done it thousands of times in her 3 years on traffic patrol. She approached the driver's window with her ticket book in hand, uniform pressed crisp, sunglasses hiding eyes weary from a sleepless night. The man lowered the window. When their eyes met, Carmen felt the blood freeze in her veins. That face, those eyes, that thin scar on his left temple. It was him, the man who, 12 years earlier, had saved her life. The man who had risked everything for her when she was just a 14-year-old girl trapped in a fire. The man who vanished before she could ever thank him. And now here he was, about to get a $540 ticket. But something was terribly wrong in his eyes, something broken, something screaming desperation. Carmen glanced at the back seat and her heart stopped. A little girl's pink suitcase with unicorn stickers, and on the passenger seat, a sheet of paper from the hospital marked Pediatric Oncology, Urgent. This man wasn't speeding for fun. He was racing to save someone. Again. Carmen Ruiz was 28 now and wore the green uniform of the Spanish traffic police with a pride that hid invisible scars. Promoted to corporal 6 months earlier, the youngest in her unit, her colleagues respected her precision and uncanny instinct. No one knew what lay beneath that flawless uniform. 12 years ago, Carmen had been a 14-year-old living in the working-class Madrid neighborhood of Vallecas. Broken family, alcoholic father, mother working triple shifts. One November night, a fire tore through their apartment building. Carmen was trapped in her room, flames blocking the door, smoke choking her. She was alone. Then, out of the black smoke, a figure emerged, a young man, maybe 25, a wet t-shirt pressed over his face. He wasn't a firefighter, he was just a passerby who heard screams and ran into the burning building while everyone else fled. He found her nearly unconscious, scooped her up, and carried her through the flames. He saved her. Then he disappeared. Carmen tried to find out who he was, but no one knew him. All she remembered clearly was his face, intense dark eyes, black hair, and that thin scar on his left temple. That stranger gave her a second chance, and she refused to waste it. She studied hard, graduated at the top of her class, joined the Civil Guard Academy, and chose traffic patrol because she wanted to save lives, the way he had saved hers. And now, on that blistering July Tuesday on the A2, as she walked up to the black BMW doing 32 miles per hour over the limit, Carmen had no idea her life was about to change again. She approached the window professionally. The driver, mid-30s, wrinkled white shirt, loosened tie, bloodshot eyes, slowly rolled it down. When their gazes locked, something exploded in Carmen's chest. She knew him instantly. Those eyes, that scar. It was him, 12 years older, worn down, broken. But it was him. The man who pulled her from the fire. Her nameless savior. Her ticket book nearly slipped from her fingers. He didn't recognize her, of course. She'd been a soot-covered 14-year-old then, now she was a 28-year-old officer in sunglasses and uniform. She kept her voice steady as she asked for his documents. His hand shook as he searched for them. That's when she saw it again, the little pink suitcase with unicorn stickers in the back, and the hospital paper on the passenger seat, La Paz University Hospital, Pediatric Oncology. Urgent appointment 3 p.m. She understood. He wasn't reckless, he was desperate to make an appointment that could mean life or death for his daughter. He handed over his license in a hoarse voice, admitting he'd messed up, saying he'd pay the fine. But his voice cracked, and Carmen saw a tear slide down his cheek before he quickly wiped it away. In that moment, she had a choice: do her duty, write the ticket, delay him, or do something entirely different, something that could cost her job but felt undeniably right. She looked at the pink suitcase, the hospital paper, those desperate eyes, and made her decision. Carmen put the ticket book away. The man looked confused. Instead of fining him, she removed her sunglasses, met his eyes, and asked if he was headed to La Paz Hospital in Monclo. He nodded, bewildered. She checked her watch. 2:35 p.m. Normal traffic would take 30 to 35 minutes. He'd be late. She returned to her patrol car, grabbed the radio, and informed dispatch she was escorting a vehicle in a medical emergency to La Paz, requesting clear passage. She walked back to the BMW and told him to follow her. He'd have a police escort. He'd make it on time. He stared at her in disbelief, asking why she'd risk her career for a stranger. Carmen gave a sad smile, looked at the scar on his temple, and said she was repaying a very old debt. He didn't understand, but there was no time. She flipped on the siren and took off, the BMW right behind her. Her partner Javier protested, but she told him to trust her. They took the fastest route to La Paz, siren blaring, traffic parting. For those 20 minutes, Carmen kept checking her rearview mirror. This man had no idea who she was. He didn't know that 12 years ago he'd saved her from a burning hell. And now fate had put him in her path when he was the one who needed saving. They arrived at the hospital at 2:54 p.m., 6 minutes early. The man jumped out, grabbed the pink suitcase, and looked at her with eyes full of hope and disbelief. He approached and said, voice trembling, "Thank you." She nodded, but stopped him before he went inside. She had one question. She asked if, 12 years ago in November, he'd been in a burning building in Vallecas. If he'd saved a 14-year-old girl. If he was the man who disappeared without giving his name. He stared at her, eyes widening as the pieces clicked. He studied her face, searching for the girl beneath the woman, and when he found her, he staggered. He whispered, "Carmen." She nodded, tears falling freely. He stepped forward, overwhelmed. He said he'd looked for her after the fire but didn't know her last name. Life had pulled him in another direction. He'd often wondered if the girl was okay. She told him she was more than okay, that she'd become who she was because of him. Every day she wore the uniform thinking of how he'd given her a second chance. He smiled through tears, then glanced at his watch, 2:58. He had to go. She stopped him once more. She asked his name. After 12 years, he said, Diego. Diego Navarro. Then he added, my daughter's name is Luna. She's 7. She has leukemia. Today's appointment is to find out if a transplant is possible. Then he ran inside, leaving Carmen standing there, trying to process the impossible coincidence. She couldn't get Diego out of her head. She finished her shift, filed reports, ignored Javier's questions. At home, she sat on the couch and let herself think. She'd found her savior after 12 years, but he wasn't the invincible hero she'd imagined. He was a broken man fighting for his daughter's life. The next day, she looked up Diego Navarro. Old articles showed him as a volunteer firefighter who'd saved several people. Then he suddenly quit. 5 years earlier, he'd lost his wife Elena in a car accident. He was left alone with 2-year-old Luna. He left firefighting for a steady factory job. 8 months ago, Luna diagnosed with acute lymphoblastic leukemia. Chemo wasn't working. The only hope was a bone marrow transplant. Carmen's chest tightened. This man had saved so many lives, including hers. He'd lost his wife and now risked losing his daughter. Where was the justice? She called La Paz Hospital. They couldn't give details, but a nurse said the only thing they needed was a compatible donor. None found yet. Carmen did something impulsive. She researched bone marrow donation, then called the donor registry. 2 days later, she was at the hospital for compatibility testing. The odds were astronomical, but she had to try. The following weeks were agonizing. She kept working, but every night she thought of Luna. 1 month later, a call, preliminary match. More tests needed. 2 weeks after that, the final call, compatible. She could donate marrow to Luna. She could save the daughter of the man who saved her. Carmen broke down in tears. She asked when they could proceed. They said they'd contact the family and let her know. She waited, unable to reach Diego directly due to privacy rules, checking her phone every day. The call came in September. Procedure scheduled in 1 week. Carmen had to pull over. Hands shaking, she cried on the roadside. She could save Luna. She could repay Diego. The circle was closing. The week was a whirlwind: time off work, pre-op exams, consents. Protocol required anonymity between donor and recipient. Carmen wouldn't meet Luna beforehand, and Diego wouldn't know the donor's identity. She wondered if Diego had suspected anything after their encounter on the A2. On the day of the procedure, she arrived at 6 a.m., nervous but determined. They'd harvest marrow from her pelvis under general anesthesia, 1-day hospital stay, some pain for a few days, then back to normal. As they prepped her, she thought of Luna. A scared 7-year-old who just wanted to go home. A little girl who deserved to grow up, to live, to love. Anesthesia took her, and she drifted off thinking, "Hold on, Luna. I'm coming." She woke hours later. Pain in her hips, but manageable. The nurse smiled, everything perfect. The marrow was on its way to Luna, ready for transplant in a sterile room. Carmen lay awake that night knowing that somewhere, Luna was receiving her cells. Her marrow was entering the girl's body, starting the fight to save her life. She was discharged the next day. At home, she cried, not from pain, but from relief, hope, and the closing of a circle begun 12 years earlier. The following weeks were tense. She received anonymous updates. After 2 weeks, the graft was taking early positive signs. After 1 month, complete remission. The transplant was a success. Carmen had to stop walking, breathe. Luna was cured, and she had been part of that miracle. But Diego didn't know. Privacy rules kept donor and recipient anonymous for 1 year. Carmen desperately wanted to see him, tell him everything, see him smile without despair, but she had to respect the rules. Then, 3 months post-transplant, fate stepped in again. Carmen was on her usual A2 shift when a familiar black BMW passed, at the exact speed limit. Her heart leaped. Same plate. Diego. Without thinking, she flashed her lights and signaled him to pull over. He stopped in the emergency lane, probably confused since he wasn't speeding. Carmen approached, heart pounding. He rolled down the window, and when he saw her, his face lit up with a huge smile. The desperate eyes were gone. He looked reborn. He asked if there was a problem. She smiled and said no, she'd just seen his car and wanted to know how he was. How was Luna? He looked at her for a long moment, then said something that surprised her. Want to know for real? Come with me. We're going to the park. Luna's with me. She was discharged 2 weeks ago. She's okay. She's cured. Carmen checked the time. She had an hour left on shift, but Javier could cover. She radioed her partner, personal emergency. Javier, used to her strange instincts, didn't ask questions. She followed Diego to Retiro Park. They parked and walked to the playground. There, on a swing, was Luna, short hair growing back after chemo, pink unicorn cap, a smile that lit up the whole park. When she saw her dad, she ran to him yelling, "Daddy," with that pure joy only kids have. Diego scooped her up, spun her, then introduced her to Carmen as a special friend who'd helped them during a tough time. Luna looked at Carmen curiously and asked, "Are you the officer who helped Daddy that day?" "He told me. He said you were really kind." Carmen fought back tears, knelt to Luna's level, and said yes, and that she was so happy to see her too. Luna grinned and asked if Carmen wanted to push her on the swing. Carmen glanced at Diego, he nodded, smiling. For the next half hour, Carmen played with Luna, pushing swings, helping on the slide, laughing at her jokes. While they played, Diego came over and said something that nearly broke her heart. He thanked her again for that day on the A2. Without her escort, they would have been late and might have missed the transplant window. Then he said a miracle had happened, they'd found a compatible donor. Someone, somewhere, had saved Luna. He didn't know who, but he prayed for that person every night, grateful such generous people existed. Carmen listened, tears streaming down her face. Diego noticed and asked if she was okay. She nodded and said only, "I'm happy for you, for Luna. She deserves all of this." Then, almost without thinking, she added, "Sometimes the world has a strange way of balancing things. You've saved so many people in your life. It was only fair someone saved someone precious to you." He looked at her intently. For a moment, she saw something in his eyes, a suspicion, an unspoken question. But then Luna called them over to see a flower she'd found, and the moment passed. Before leaving, Diego asked if they could meet again, maybe for coffee. He said he felt a connection that went beyond that day on the A2. Carmen said yes, gave him her number, and they parted. That night, lying in bed, Carmen wondered how much longer she could keep the secret. Every time she saw Diego, every time she watched Luna play with innocent joy, she wanted to shout, "It was me. I saved her. Part of me is inside you, Luna, keeping you alive." But it wasn't time yet. 9 more months until the protocol allowed revelation. 9 months of seeing Diego and Luna, slowly building a friendship, quietly falling in love with the man who saved her as a child and the child she had saved. She could wait. She'd waited 12 years to find Diego. 9 months was nothing. The months flew by faster than she expected. Carmen, Diego, and Luna became inseparable. She visited every weekend, parks, movies, museums. Diego invited her for dinner. They cooked together, talked for hours after Luna went to bed. Slowly, inevitably, Carmen and Diego fell in love. Neither had said it out loud, but it was there, in every look, every accidental brush of hands, every smile. Luna started calling her Aunt Carmen and always asked when she'd come back. But the secret weighed on Carmen like a stone. Every time Diego spoke gratefully of the anonymous donor, every time he said how he wished he could thank that person, the words rose in her throat, "It's me. I'm right here." Finally, the day came. 1 year after the transplant, Carmen received a letter from the hospital. She could now reveal her identity if she wished. She held the letter for days, wondering how, when, how to say it. She feared Diego's reaction. Might he be angry she'd kept it secret so long? Feel manipulated? She decided to do it in a special way. She invited Diego and Luna over for dinner, saying she had something important to tell them. Diego accepted, curious but unsuspecting. That night, Carmen prepared everything carefully, simple food made with love, table beautifully set, and beside her plate, the hospital letter. Luna chattered excitedly through dinner about school, friends, wanting to be a vet when she grew up. Diego smiled, relaxed, looking back and forth between his daughter and Carmen with eyes that looked a lot like love. After dinner, when Luna went to watch cartoons, Diego asked what she wanted to say. Carmen handed him the letter without a word. He opened it, puzzled, and began reading. Hospital header, transplant program. Words sank in slowly. Compatible donor, successful transplant, 1-year anonymity period complete, option to reveal identity. He looked up at Carmen, face drained of color, staring as if trying to process. Tears rolled down Carmen's cheeks. She said simply, "It was me, Diego. I donated the marrow to Luna. That day on the A2, when we recognized each other after 12 years, I knew I had to do something. I got tested, and by miracle, or fate, or whatever you want to call it, I was compatible. I got to save your daughter. I got to repay what you did for me." Diego sat frozen for what felt like forever. Then he began to cry, deep, body-shaking sobs. He stood, crossed the kitchen, pulled Carmen into his arms, and held her so tightly she could barely breathe. He said nothing for minutes, just held her, crying into her hair. Finally, voice breaking, he whispered, "You saved my daughter. You saved Luna. How can I ever? Carmen cut him off. No thanks needed. He'd given her a life 12 years ago, she'd simply returned the favor. They were even. The circle was closed. Diego pulled back, looked into her eyes, and did something she didn't expect. He kissed her. A kiss full of gratitude, love, desperation, relief, all mixed together. A kiss that tasted of tears and hope. When they parted, Luna stood in the doorway, watching, confused. She asked if Aunt Carmen and Daddy were kissing like in the movies. Diego laughed through tears, scooped her up, looked at Carmen, and said, Luna, I need to tell you something important. Carmen isn't just Aunt Carmen. She's so much more. She's the person who saved your life. Luna's eyes went wide. She didn't fully understand, she was still little, but she knew it was huge. She asked if it was true. Carmen nodded. Luna thought for a second, then reached for Carmen. Carmen took her, and the girl hugged her tightly, saying, Then I love you even more, Aunt Carmen. 2 years later, Carmen was no longer just a traffic officer. She was Diego's wife and Luna's adoptive mother. They married in a small ceremony in Retiro Park, the same place Carmen first met Luna. Luna was 9 now, fully cured, long hair finally grown back, full of life and dreams. She went to school, played with friends, and every night before bed hugged both Diego and Carmen, saying, I love you, Mom and Dad. The first time Luna called Carmen Mom, all three cried. Carmen never thought she'd have a family. She'd grown up poor, with troubled parents, believing she was alone in the world. Now she had this, a husband she loved, a daughter she adored, a home full of love. Diego had left the factory job. With Carmen's help, he opened a small safety and first aid training school. He taught people how to save lives in emergencies, saying that if he could inspire even one person to help another the way he'd helped Carmen 12 years ago, his life had meaning. Carmen still worked traffic patrol, but now every ticket she wrote, every driver she stopped, she did knowing you never know who's behind the wheel. Someone might be racing to save a life. Someone might need help more than punishment. One night, curled up on the couch watching a movie, Luna asked how she and Diego had really met. Carmen and Diego exchanged a look, smiled, and started telling the story, the fire, the girl saved, the mysterious man who vanished, the ticket never written, the desperate race to the hospital, the impossible recognition. The secret transplant, the wait, the truth revealed. Luna listened, spellbound. When they finished, she said something that made them both cry. So Daddy saved you, you saved me, and I saved both of you by bringing you back together. We're a family of lifesavers. And she was right. That's exactly what they were, a family built on courage, sacrifice, and a love that had traveled through 12 years, a fire, an illness, and 1,000 impossible coincidences to bring the three of them exactly where they belonged, together, safe, whole.